The first time I held my twins, I remember thinking they were impossibly small, like they might disappear if I blinked too long. One cried loudly, red-faced and furious at the world. The other was quiet, eyes half closed, breathing so softly I had to press my finger to his chest just to feel it rise. The nurse smiled and said, "They're very different already." I didn't know then how cruelly true those words would become. My pregnancy had been difficult from the start. Complications, endless hospital visits, whispered conversations between doctors that stopped the moment I entered the room. My husband had died months earlier in a road accident, leaving me alone and terrified. The only person who stayed with me through everything was my older sister, Nadia. She moved into my house, managed my appointments, spoke to doctors on my behalf when I was too exhausted to argue. Everyone said I was lucky to have her. The delivery went wrong. I remember screaming, the sharp smell of antiseptic, Nadia's voice telling me to breathe. Then darkness. When I woke up, my body felt hollow, like something essential had been carved out of me. My sister was sitting beside the bed, her eyes red, her face tight with grief. "You lost one of them," she said softly, taking my hand. "The doctors tried everything." The words didn't make sense at first. Lost one. As if I had misplaced a shoe or dropped something in the street. Then the pain hit, so deep it stole my breath. I sobbed until my stitches burned and my throat felt raw. Nadia cried with me, holding my head to her chest, rocking me like a child. "They say the other one is stable," she whispered. "You need to rest." I never saw the body. Nadia said it would be too traumatic, that I wasn't strong enough yet. The hospital handled everything quickly. Too quickly. There was paperwork I barely remember signing, my sister guiding my hand. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? The funeral was small. A tiny white coffin, so light the gravedigger carried it with one hand. I remember thinking it looked empty. The imam spoke gently about God's will, about patience and reward. People told me I was strong, that I would heal. I stood there numb, clutching Nadia's arm, while they lowered my baby into the ground. I named him Adam. I whispered the name into the dirt after everyone left, my tears darkening the soil. Nadia stood behind me, silent, her face hidden behind sunglasses. She said nothing when I begged her to swear that he had really existed, that I hadn't imagined holding two babies in my arms. In the weeks that followed, I focused all my love on the child I had left. My surviving son, Sammy. He was healthy, hungry, demanding. I told myself I was lucky. One baby was better than none. That loving him was the only way to honor the one I had lost. But sometimes, late at night, I would wake up convinced I heard another cry. A softer one. A sound that felt familiar in my bones. When I mentioned it, Nadia would brush it off, saying grief plays tricks on the mind. I believed her. After all, she was the one who had held me together while I buried my child. I had no idea that the grave I cried over was already empty. The doctors discharged me after 10 days, saying my body needed time and my heart even more. Nadia brought Sammy home herself, insisting I shouldn't lift anything heavy. She had already set up the nursery while I was still in the hospital. The crib was placed near the window, tiny clothes folded with obsessive neatness. It all looked perfect. Too perfect. At first, I was grateful. Grief made me slow and forgetful. I forgot to eat, forgot what day it was, forgot the sound of my own voice before it broke. Nadia handled everything, night feedings, visitors, paperwork, phone calls. She told people what happened, so I wouldn't have to repeat the story of losing a child over and over again. But small things began to bother me. Sammy didn't feel the way I remembered my twins feeling in the hospital. I told myself it was exhaustion, trauma, hormones. Still, when I held him, something inside me stayed tense, like a question that refused to be answered. He cried loudly, angrily, just like the first baby I had held, the red-faced one, the one the nurse had joked about being dramatic. The quiet baby, the one I had named Adam, haunted me more and more. I remembered his tiny fingers curling around mine. I remembered the faint birthmark near his left ear. A pale crescent, barely visible, but there. One night, while changing Sammy's clothes, I froze. I leaned closer, my heart pounding, searching behind his ear. There was nothing. I laughed at myself, a short, broken sound. Birthmarks don't always appear right away, I told myself. Or maybe Adam had been the one without it. Memory is unreliable when grief twists it. Still, doubt crept in like a slow poison. Nadia became strangely protective of Sammy. She corrected the way I held him, the way I fed him, even the way I spoke to him. If he cried in my arms, she would swoop in immediately. "He's hungry," she'd say. Or, "You're upsetting him." Sometimes she would take him into her room at night and lock the door, claiming I needed uninterrupted sleep. I hated how relieved I felt when she did. I hated myself even more for letting her. Visitors commented on how much Sammy looked like Nadia. "He has your eyes," one aunt said to her, smiling. Nadia laughed too quickly. "Family resemblance," she replied. I tried to ignore the way my stomach tightened at those words. One afternoon, while Nadia was out buying groceries, I went through the documents she had neatly filed away. Hospital discharge papers, vaccination schedules, birth certificates. My hands shook as I read. There was only one birth certificate. I stared at it until the letters blurred. My name. My husband's name. One child. I told myself it was a clerical mistake. Hospitals make errors. Paperwork gets delayed. Nadia had said everything was handled. I shoved the file back before she returned, my chest aching with shame for doubting her. That night, I dreamed of the funeral again. The white coffin. The sound it made when it hit the ground, a dull, hollow thud that echoed far too loudly. In the dream, the coffin cracked open, and inside was nothing but folded cloth. I woke up screaming. Nadia rushed in, shaking me, whispering my name urgently. Sammy began to cry from the noise. As she rocked him, I watched her face in the dim light. For a split second, before she noticed me staring, her expression wasn't concern. It was fear. That was the moment the thought fully formed in my mind, terrifying and impossible. What if I hadn't buried my baby? What if I had been buried in a lie instead? After that night, I stopped trusting my own silence. Every doubt I had swallowed began to claw its way back up. I watched Nadia constantly. How she held Sammy, how she spoke to him, how her body seemed to curve protectively around his crib, as if shielding him from me. I told myself I was being paranoid. Grief does that. But paranoia doesn't explain why my sister flinched every time I asked a simple question. "When did they move Adam's body?" I asked one morning, trying to sound casual as she made tea. Her hand slipped. The spoon clattered loudly against the cup. "Why would you ask that?" she said too quickly. I don't remember anything clearly. I want to know."
She didn't look at me.
"Hospitals have protocols. You were unconscious. I handled it." That answer used to be enough. Now it felt rehearsed. Later that day, while she was bathing Sammy, I stood in the doorway and watched. She hummed softly, the same lullaby our mother used to sing to us. When Sammy calmed in her arms, something ugly and sharp twisted in my chest. "He settles faster with you," I said. Nadia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Babies sense confidence. That night, after she went to sleep, I searched the internet on my phone. Stories of hospitals mixing up babies. Twins declared stillborn who later turned out to be alive. Rare cases, but not impossible. Each article made my heart pound harder. I needed facts. The next morning, I told Nadia I wanted to visit Adam's grave.
Just to sit there. Just to talk.
She froze, keys in her hand. "It's too soon," she said. "You'll hurt yourself." "I need it," I insisted. "Please." Her jaw tightened.
"Fine."
"But I'm coming with you." The cemetery was quiet, the air heavy with heat and dust. I walked straight to the small mound of earth marked with Adam's name. My legs gave out when I reached it. I knelt, pressing my palms into the dirt, whispering apologies through my tears. Nadia stood a few steps back, arms crossed. "I want to see the burial record," I said suddenly. without turning around. What? The paperwork. The grave number. Something official. Her silence stretched too long. I took care of everything, she repeated. Why are you doing this to yourself? I looked up at her then. Really looked. Her face was pale, her eyes darting toward the cemetery office. You're hiding something, I said quietly. She laughed, sharp and defensive. You've lost a child. Of course you're confused. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Confusion didn't explain the missing documents. It didn't explain the empty feeling I'd had at the funeral. It didn't explain the way my sister treated my son like he was hers. When we returned home, I waited until Nadia left to run an errand. Then I called the hospital. The woman on the line was polite, efficient. She asked for my file number, my name, my date of delivery. I held my breath as she typed. Yes, she said slowly. I see one live birth recorded. My heart slammed against my ribs. There were 2 babies, I said. Twins. There was a pause. I'm not seeing a record of a stillbirth, she replied carefully. If you believe there's an error, you'll need to come in. I ended the call with shaking hands. That evening, I watched Nadia feed Sammy, her back to me. The truth pressed against my chest, heavy and terrifying. If the hospital had no record of my child's death, then someone else had decided his fate. And the only person who had been there the whole time was my sister. I didn't confront Nadia right away. Fear kept my mouth shut. If she was capable of lying about my baby's death, what else was she capable of doing? Instead, I began to watch and listen, storing every strange detail like pieces of a puzzle I was finally brave enough to assemble. That night, after Nadia went to bed, I stood outside her room. The door was closed as it always was now. Before, she had never locked it. Since Sammy came home, it stayed shut, a thin line of darkness separating me from whatever she was hiding. I turned the handle slowly.
Locked.
My heart sank. A mother shouldn't be locked out of her own child's presence. The next day, I pretended everything was normal. I smiled. I thanked her. I let her take Sammy from my arms without protest. Nadia relaxed just a little. I could see it in the way her shoulders dropped, the way her voice softened again. That afternoon, she left to visit a friend. The moment her car disappeared down the street, I went to her room. I used a hairpin, hands trembling as I worked at the lock like a criminal in my own home. When it finally clicked open, I felt sick with guilt and relief. The room smelled different from the rest of the house. Baby powder. Milk. Something warm and alive. Sammy was sleeping in his crib, but it wasn't him that made my breath catch. It was the second crib. Hidden behind the wardrobe, pushed into the corner like a secret that didn't want to be seen. My legs nearly gave out. I stepped closer, my pulse roaring in my ears. Inside the crib lay a baby. Another baby. He was asleep, fists curled near his face, breathing soft and steady. My vision blurred as I knelt beside him. I didn't need anyone to tell me who he was. I knew. Behind his left ear, faint but unmistakable, was the pale crescent-shaped birthmark.
Adam.
A sound tore out of my chest, half sob, half scream. I clamped my hand over my mouth to keep from waking him. Tears streamed down my face as I reached out, barely touching his tiny arm, terrified he would vanish like smoke. He was warm.
Real. Alive.
I had buried an empty coffin. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. I barely had time to stand before Nadia appeared in the doorway. Her face drained of color when she saw me beside the crib. "Don't touch him," she said sharply. The words didn't register at first. I turned to her slowly, my hands shaking, my entire body burning with rage and disbelief. "You let me bury my son," I whispered. "You watched me cry over an empty grave." She shut the door behind her, locking it out of instinct. For a moment, she looked less like my sister and more like a stranger cornered by the truth. "I did what I had to do," she said. "For who?" I screamed. "For you?" Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed firm. "For him." She told me everything then, in broken pieces at first, then in a rush, like a confession she'd been rehearsing for months. Her husband couldn't have children. Their marriage was collapsing. When the doctors said one of my twins was weak, that survival wasn't guaranteed, something dark and desperate took root in her mind. Adam hadn't been dying. He had just been smaller, quieter. She bribed a nurse, changed records, told me the baby had passed while I was unconscious. She said she thought she could give him a better life, that I was too fragile, too broken to raise 2 children alone. I slapped her. Not hard enough to satisfy my anger. Not hard enough to erase the image of that tiny coffin sinking into the ground. You stole my child, I said, my voice deadly calm now. You stole my grief, my motherhood, my truth. She clutched Adam to her chest, backing away. He's my son now. No, I said, stepping forward. He's coming home with me. And for the first time since my delivery, Nadia looked truly afraid. Nadia didn't scream or beg. She did something far more terrifying. She smiled. It was small, tight, and utterly wrong, like someone who believed they had already won. She shifted Adam higher against her shoulder, rocking him instinctively, daring me to come closer. You can't take him, she said calmly. You're not well. The words hit harder than any slap. I watched you fall apart, she continued. You couldn't even hold Sammy without shaking. You hear cries that aren't there. You wake up screaming. Who do you think they'll believe, you or me? My blood ran cold. You planned this, I whispered. She nodded. Not at first. But once I saw how easy it was, how everyone trusted me, I realized I could keep him safe. By letting me bury my own child. You buried a story, she snapped. A necessary one. I lunged forward, but she retreated, shielding Adam with her body. He stirred, letting out a soft cry. The sound shattered what little control I had left. Please, I said, my voice breaking. Give him to me. I won't tell anyone. Just let me hold my son. For a moment, her resolve wavered. Her arms loosened. I stepped closer, my hands inches away. Then the front door slammed. Her husband's voice echoed down the hall. Nadia? Why is the baby crying? Her grip tightened again instantly. Go, she hissed at me. If you don't want to lose both of them. I backed away slowly, my heart screaming louder than my mouth ever could. Nadia walked past me as if I didn't exist, carrying Adam into the living room, her face transforming into that gentle, worried expression everyone loved. That night, I lay awake replaying every word she'd said. They'll believe me. The truth was she was right. On paper, I was a grieving widow with documented trauma. Therapy sessions. Medication. A sister who had selflessly stepped in to help. And Nadia had witnesses. I needed proof. The next morning, I called a lawyer. My hands shook so badly, I could barely hold the phone. I didn't tell them everything, just enough to ask one crucial question. What happens if a child is illegally taken at birth? The answer was simple. It's kidnapping. But kidnapping requires evidence. I began secretly recording conversations. I photographed the second crib when Nadia wasn't home. I searched through her laptop, my stomach twisting as I found emails, messages to a private clinic, a nurse's name, transfers of money marked as consultation. My sister hadn't just stolen my child. She had built a paper trail. One night, I confronted her again, my phone hidden in my pocket, recording everything. You said Adam was weak, I told her softly, that he might not survive. She hesitated. That's what the doctor said. Which doctor? Her eyes flicked away. Why are you asking this again? Because I spoke to the hospital, I said. They have no record of his death. The room went silent. Her face drained of color. You went behind my back? You went behind my womb, I replied. She laughed nervously. You're twisting things. You always do. I leaned in close enough that she could hear my heart pounding. I know the nurse's name, I said. I know about the money. And I know Adam is legally mine. Her hand flew to her mouth. In that moment I saw it, pure panic. But panic quickly hardened into fury. If you expose me, she said coldly, I will take Sammy too. I will tell them you're unstable, that you tried to hurt them. That was the moment I understood. This wasn't just about Adam anymore. If I didn't act fast, I could lose both my children. And this time, there would be no grave to cry over, just empty arms and a sister who had erased me completely. I stopped sleeping after that. Every creak of the house felt like a warning. Every cry, real or imagined, sent my heart racing. I moved through the days quietly, carefully, playing the role Nadia expected, fragile, obedient, defeated. Inside, I was planning a war. I met the lawyer in person. I brought everything: photos of a second crib, screenshots of Nadia's emails, audio recordings of her contradictions, bank transfers linked to the nurse. The lawyer listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker by the minute. "This is serious," he said finally. "But you need one thing more than evidence." "What?" I asked. "Access to the child. A witness moment. Something undeniable." That opportunity came sooner than I expected. A week later, Nadia announced she was taking Adam to the pediatrician. Alone. "No," I said immediately, my voice firmer than it had been in months. "I'm coming."
She stared at me, calculating.
Refusing would look suspicious. Agreeing would be dangerous, for her.
"Fine," she said.
"But don't make a scene." At the clinic, the nurse smiled at us both, then frowned slightly as she reviewed the file. "There seems to be some confusion," she said. "This child's records are incomplete." Nadia stiffened. I stepped forward. "That's because he's my son. He was taken from me at birth." The nurse looked between us, alarmed. "I'm going to get the doctor." Nadia grabbed Adam and stood up. "We're leaving." I blocked her path. "You're not," I said quietly. The doctor arrived, followed by a hospital administrator. I laid everything out: dates, names, recordings. I played the audio where Nadia admitted changing the story, where she said, "I did what I had to do." The room fell silent. "This is beyond us," the administrator said carefully. "We need to contact authorities." Nadia screamed then, not in grief, in rage. "She's lying," she shouted, pointing at me. "She's unstable. She imagined a second baby." I lifted my shirt sleeve and turned my head slightly. Behind my left ear was the same pale crescent-shaped birthmark. "It runs in our family," I said. Both twins had it. The doctor's eyes widened. That was the moment everything changed.
Police arrived.
Statements were taken. Adam was placed in temporary protective care. When they asked who his mother was, I didn't hesitate. "I am," I said. "And I can prove it." DNA testing was ordered immediately. Nadia was taken aside, still shouting, still denying. Her husband stood in the corner, face ashen, as if seeing her for the first time. The wait for results was unbearable. Adam was only allowed supervised visits. Each time I held him, my chest ached with a grief that had nowhere to go. I whispered apologies into his hair. I told him I never let him go. I was just forced to believe I had. The call came 3 days later. The twins were mine. Both of them. The officer's voice was gentle when he said it, but the words hit like thunder. Nadia was arrested that evening on charges of kidnapping, fraud, and conspiracy. The nurse confessed. The money trail spoke louder than any lie ever could. When I brought Adam home for the first time legally, finally, I stood in the nursery between two cribs. Sammy slept peacefully in one. Adam stirred in the other. I sank to the floor between them and cried, not in despair, but in release. One child returned from the dead. One truth returned to the light. But justice wasn't finished yet, because the woman who let me bury my baby still had one thing left to lose. And in court, she would lose it publicly. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Sterile. Unforgiving. Nadia sat at the defense table in a pale blouse, her hair pulled back neatly, as if control over her appearance could still control the story. She didn't look at me when I walked in with both my sons, one in each arm, living proof of her lie. The judge listened. The jury listened. And for the first time since the day I woke up in that hospital bed, I didn't have to fight to be believed. The nurse testified first. Her voice shook as she explained how Nadia had approached her, how desperation had turned into money, how records were altered while I lay unconscious. The emails were read aloud. The transfers displayed on a screen. Each detail stripped another layer from the woman I used to call my sister. Then it was Nadia's turn.
She cried.
She spoke of love, of fear, of wanting to save a child from a broken mother. She pointed to my therapy records, my grief, my nightmares. She said she never meant to hurt me. I stood when my lawyer called me forward. I buried a coffin I was told held my child, I said calmly. I knelt in dirt and apologized to a baby who was still breathing somewhere else. That wasn't love. That was theft. The courtroom was silent. The judge didn't hesitate when the verdict was read.
Guilty.
Nadia was sentenced. The length of time mattered less than the word itself.
Guilty.
Official.
Permanent.
When it was over, I visited the cemetery one last time. I stood over the small grave marked with Adam's name and felt something inside me finally loosen. I didn't dig it up. I didn't need to. The truth had already risen. I found you, I whispered. I'm sorry it took so long. I had the headstone removed later. No more lies. No more empty graves. Life didn't become perfect after that. Healing wasn't instant. Some nights I still wake up, heart racing, listening for cries. But now, when I hear them, they're real, and they're mine to answer. Sammy grew curious, loud, fearless. Adam stayed gentle, observant, his quiet strength shining through. Different from the very beginning, just as I remembered. As for Nadia, she wrote letters from prison. Apologies. Explanations. Excuses. I never replied. Some graves are meant to stay closed. I am no longer the woman who buried her child. I am the mother who brought him home. And every night, when I tuck my twins into bed and turn off the light, I remember this. The truth may be buried for a while, but it always breathes its way back to the surface.